Hey guys, this video is brought to you from a prompt from my Instagram broadcast channel, The Nomadic Island. And I primarily wanted to make this channel to kind of investigate, firstly, just how it works, and to give everyone a new way to engage with me, to ask me questions and such. And so the first question that I like to talk about is mindset, which was a question that was asked by Lawrence, a good friend of mine. And it's a topic that I'm personally really passionate about because it doesn't just mean mindset in jiu-jitsu, it just means mindset in life, mindset in training. It's things on the mat, but also off of the mat. And I think the way that you carry yourself on the mat is often a reflection of how you carry yourself off of the mat. And the way I see myself as someone who's pretty zen, pretty calm under any circumstances. If I think about my jiu-jitsu, often I think about how I try and stay composed no matter how high the stress is in the environment. Low stress, high stress, I kind of want to look the same, I want to feel the same way. It would be really hard to see a difference whether it was high stress or low stress if you're just looking at my face, right? I think, let's talk about jiu-jitsu first because that's what people are primarily interested about. I think within jiu-jitsu, the way that I've been able to maintain such composure over the years is just really being prepared. Being prepared is usually the easiest way to remain confident in any situation. Feeling confident and secure in any situation generally just means that your training has served you. Your training has served you to the point that you feel prepared for any situation and any outcome. You could think of any single position in jiu-jitsu and you should be ready. You should know an answer, at least a couple of answers to any situation. And I think just like understanding that in a jiu-jitsu context, you can translate it across into your daily life and think, well, usually anxiety is a lack of preparedness for a situation. We start to ruminate on things that are beyond our control, but if we can do our utmost to really prepare ourselves for all of the things, all of the scenarios that could happen, or it's impossible to do all, right? But the vast majority, we can try and prepare ourselves as much as possible so we don't have that anxiety. And I think, again, just not to ramble on too long on this part, I think that if you take a look throughout my entire career, or how I see my career at least, I've remained fairly similar throughout, because very early on in my career, I structured my training in such a way that I try to prepare myself for most of the positions that could arise. Because if we think of jiu-jitsu as a movement platform, there are only so many moves that exist within the movement platform. Because there's only so many moves that exist in the movement platform, there's a finite number of options that I can get ready for, right? Then we can kind of look at what are the most typical scenarios for competitors. And then we can go a step further and even take a look at like weight divisions, like what are trends in certain weight divisions and such. So again, very signature of me to go off onto some tangents, but that's a little part of how I stay composed in jiu-jitsu. I think, why do I like talking about Zen so much? I have this feeling in jiu-jitsu and outside of jiu-jitsu that staying Zen is quite peaceful, as the word may infer. And if I can maintain this peace throughout all of my days, that makes me feel quite fulfilled, that makes me feel quite happy. Of course, I am a competitor. This sounds quite contrary to what competition is, quite chaotic. There's a lot going on, it's very high stress. So how are we able to stay zen in those situations? It's really finding moments of comfort, pockets of positions that allow me to stay in that zen zone. And of course, it's not always going to be super easy to find those Zen moments. Zen doesn't mean like finding control and stopping all movement. I think a lot of people think about control as in like, I'm going to put you in closed guard. I can hold you and it's a fixed position. I can just keep you there, rather than just thinking, well, I can actually be Zen in motion, in dynamic movements. Because if I'm having like a specific grip sequence, like we know that a certain sequence requires certain moves, certain switches, but we are so locked in. We know exactly the right transition time to go from one grip to another. That in itself, we understand like, okay, before this person reacts or moves into this space in the exchange, I have to have already executed this. I think knowing stuff like that, and again, this takes experience, this takes mat time, but this will really allow you to find your Zen in motion rather than in a fixed position, where a lot of people typically at the beginning of their jiu-jitsu journeys, they really like close guard because it feels safe. Like what we are looking for at the end of the day is safety, right? So I think this is a nice way to think about it. Like, how can we still find our Zen in a dynamic exchange, like emotion? Zen to me is really important. Again, just trying to take it back out of jiu-jitsu. It's really important to me because I think especially as you get older, you know, like you start to see like you accumulate a lot of different responsibilities. It's not always going to be as easy as like, well, I can just like have fun all the time. There's like serious shit that you need to take care of. And because the ebb and flow of life, there's always going to be the good things. There's always going to be the bad things, right? That's just the nature of life, those polarities, those opposites. And it's like jiu-jitsu also. You can get into some bad situations, you get into some good situations. It's really how you deal with it and how you conduct yourself throughout. Like, how are you able to kind of just accept that those things will happen, go through it. I think it really allows you to thrive no matter what the situation is, you know, just kind of accepting, well, it isn't bad to be in a bad situation, or it isn't necessarily like good, or like we don't have to like be so attached to like, oh, I only want good things to happen. It's more this acceptance and understanding that life has to contain both. To feel this sense of fulfillment and true happiness, I think to really experience true happiness, you have to have felt what sadness feels like, what those negative moments feels like. Like in the past year, I've been recovering from very significant injuries, although I still managed to be very active during the season. And I think like the perspective it's given me during this year, even though we just started this year, I'm very grateful for any training day where I can train without pain, or I have better range of motion or more strength in certain areas than before. And I think like I'm really grateful to just kind of like have gone through that experience, despite in the moment I probably wouldn't have said that, but like in life it's often like that, you know. I think overall, like if you're in a bad position, the bad position teaches you a lot of things that you probably wouldn't have understood if you never put yourself in those situations, right? Like understanding something that we see quite often in a lot of Nogi-centric gyms is that they tend to train a lot of defensive positions, a lot of escapes, especially a lot of my friends at 10th Planet. They are some of the top practitioners in defensive jiu-jitsu and also escaping positions. It's very hard to submit some of them because they are just so savvy about these like little nuances that you wouldn't have the ability to have that depth of understanding without really putting yourself out there or having the full experience of jiu-jitsu, right? I think on the other hand, classic tangent again, to be successful in jiu-jitsu or to win at jiu-jitsu, you don't necessarily need to have that facet. Like you can always impose your game and fully like think about how do I assert the tempo from the beginning until the end, and I just like get the exact outcome that I want. And of course, then in that instance, you wouldn't need to really ever have to put yourself in a defensive situation. But it's in that what if you do get into a bad position, do you have what it takes to get out? I'll probably finish on this part. We can make another video later and talk about more stuff, but I think for me, my vision, the way I think about things in jiu-jitsu is that, of course, winning is important because I'm a competitor. It's part of my identity, one of the identities. But I think the most important thing to me as a practitioner is to really gain deep understanding of jiu-jitsu, which of course that would include the offensive side of things, the defensive side of things, and just kind of ruminate as much as possible about the interplay of all these different positions. Because I think to truly enjoy something fully, we really have to understand everything that the movement platform has to offer. I think in those instances, we can really see like, wow, jiu-jitsu is so much more than just this win and lose game, you know? Like often we're always trying to hunt for a submission or to try to advance position. I've talked about this for many years with a lot of my close friends and people that I train with, but there's so many different ways to gamify jiu-jitsu. And I think that is something that I take into different parts of my life, and I try to apply this way of thinking, you know, like try to apply this way of improvisation, you know, and this adaptability, that it's not something that's fixed and rigid. I think there's so many ways, depending on what your motives are. Maybe it's not just to, again, compete. It's just to enjoy something more. It's your passion, like your hobby that you like to do after work or after school, and you don't necessarily want to be competitive with it, but it's something that you just want to see all the movement options available, or how to connect to a partner in different body movements, different body positions. Like, how can you have more fun with it? Because, you know, I think my mentality when I started was that, hey, like, I think this art is so fascinating. There is so much to offer. It is not just a standing martial art, it's an art. And it's also very much on the floor. You can play from supine position, you can play from seated position. It has so much to offer, especially because it's not something that you do just by yourself. You have to have a partner to do it, and it's always going to be dependent on the reactions of our partner. So it's kind of always like having a new game. If you like to cross train, which I personally like, I really endorse cross training, because it's like every single gym, every single country you go to and you train someone new, right? It's a whole new pool of movement problems and a whole new pool of movement personalities, because your personality off the mat, my personal belief is that whatever your personality is off of the mat is often going to be seen in your jiu-jitsu game. So I'm going to finish on this. Like, I'd love to know in the comments, or you can also DM me, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think your personality on the mat is a reflection of who you are in your daily life? And if it isn't, why do you think that is? And do you think it will change to become more like it? Or do you have, like, after me saying that, do you kind of gravitate towards wanting to make that more connected? Catch you later.